We say good afternoon to Chris Dimakos, CJAD 800 legal contributor. And Chris, this is a great story because this is very much in the news for people who haven't heard. Turns out an Air Canada pilot, or at least the pilot employed by Air Canada, has now been charged with fraud. Basically, I kind of hate to put it this way, flying without the proper license, if you will. And it's worth a lot of money here. Apparently, he was paid over $2.5 million in salary over his years with the airline. So this has been going on for a while. But then your note says, and here's what I don't understand, Air Canada is trying to keep this from escalating. Escalating how? What does that mean?
Well, escalating from not so much from what the consequences will be to the individual, but what the consequences and the legal exposure is to Air Canada, because you have a whole bunch of people that flew on that airline. They paid for tickets to fly on that airline, and when they did so, it was under the impression that there would be a pilot who had the required licenses, and that goes for safety and security and also for the cost, right? I mean, you're flying with a reputable airline that should have done all the due diligence that they need to do. So they are, I understand why, very concerned about how this can start to gain steam in terms of a class action lawsuit or people starting to file complaints and want to, for whatever reason, a refund. But they're going to start digging and they're going to start taking a look at it. Was there any incidents here? What happened during this tenure? You know, what could have Air Canada have done to not have this happen? Would another airline in the same situation, would they have caught this? Were they negligent in the way they did? There's so many questions that if the answers that come back are pointing the finger at Air Canada with some fault, well, then the question is, okay, well, is that fault worth anything? And that's when the lawyers start swooping in and the class action lawyers start swooping in. So right now, there's a whole bunch of law firms that specialize in class action lawsuits that are going through the situation and trying to figure out whether or not there's a claim to be made. That I can promise you.
I have a question. Yeah. If you were on one of the flights that this pilot, flew on, was your pilot, and you got to where you were going and nothing happened, how would you have a lawsuit? I mean, if nothing happened to you, if there were no crashes, no injuries, where's your lawsuit exactly?
Right, and like Aaron, you've been gifted the legal mind without having to go to law school. So what you're saying basically is, where's the prejudice here? Where is the damage? Right. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If I fly on this flight, okay, and he didn't have his license, where's the damage? Well, how have I been put out in any shape or form? And you're absolutely right about that. Damages are usually related to what your loss is. However, and this is a big little asterisk here, sometimes there's damages awarded not to compensate, but to punish. And those come in the form of, well, nothing happened here, but something could have happened here, and we can't have airlines doing this in the future. So the courts are going to say, well, you got to pay for that until you can learn your lesson. It's happened to insurance companies. It's happened to many big corporations and with data breaches. So to answer your question, not so much what you experienced, but it's more a question of we can't have companies like that, making legal and mistakes that are considered to be negligent in the law. So there's two components there. There's the actual loss that you suffer, but also a punitive one that can sometimes translate into damages.
As you say this, I think to myself, we don't even know this pilot's name, I don't think yet, do we?
I think I've read it. I don't know top of hand, but I think I did read the name.
Okay. I hadn't seen it, and I just thought to myself as you were saying that, Chris, imagine you were on a flight, right? You happen to know that this was your pilot, although I don't know how, but let's say you did, and you arrived an hour late and you want to blame the pilot. Now you find out he was flying, without a license or shouldn't have been on that plane, and maybe that gives you a chance to sue for something. I don't know. But at the end of the day here, I wonder as well, he's charged with fraud. He's been convicted of nothing yet.
He's been convicted of nothing. It's just, and if you look at the statements that are coming out of the Air Canada camp, they're basically saying we can't say much. We're investigating. The status quo. Let's just everybody calm down here. Let us figure out what happened here. But that being said, yes, he's been charged with this. Usually, what happens with these types of situations is, the minute that charge is filed and the court number is attributed to this file, well, then all of these legal mechanisms that the prosecution has they, in terms of searching, in terms of disclosure, in terms of all these different examinations that they can have, pre-trial examinations, all that stuff is going to probably yield more information than they have right now, and that might spur into additional charges. But this is just the tip right of the iceberg. We're going to get further into this, and I can assure you that stuff is going to come out that probably the parties don't want to come out, but it's probably going to come out. So, and again, that same goes for all of those who specialize in, that's their line of work in these class actions. Yeah. They're looking for that stuff too. They're looking to see if there are any grounds there that they can escalate the damage portion of their suit. Right? That's what everybody wants to know. Is it worth your time and your energy if the payout's there? So everyone is going through and searching and trying to figure this out.
So I guess, this would be, if it's like other ones, anybody who flew Air Canada, if this does in fact go to class action status, would be possibly a beneficiary of any settlement that there was made?
Yeah, so again, the certification part of it, and that would be determined by the courts. I mean, who exactly would fall into this. So it would probably be anybody who flew on these types of flights with this pilot, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, what you raised right at the top is going to be critical here. So a judge is, they've often certified classes. It doesn't mean that you're going to win your case. It just means that there's something to be heard here, right, and explore. But what you said at the top, Aaron, I think is probably the most important point here is, where is the damage, right? So we flew with him. He was obviously competent. He obviously was a pilot. He lacked certain credentials, but it doesn't seem that there were any major incidents that happened because of his lack of qualification. So that's
a crazy story. Look, I guess the other issue here, and let's deal with this on a non-Air Canada basis, right? So you bring one up here as well. You say with more and more employees taking leave for mental health, employers are now faced with the possibility of having to let an employee go who is currently on leave. We know that's happened. I know cases like that. What does an employer need to know here before going ahead and doing this? Because this potentially, you got to tread carefully,
and,
right?
I have to say it, but the truth is, many times when an employee goes on leave because of the mental stress that they're having at work, it's usually because there's a trajectory there, and that trajectory is it's not going well at work. The employer's not happy. There's more stress. There's more difficult discussions, and then sometimes the employee's like, "I've had enough. I need a break from this. I'm going to take some time," and that might be something that prevents the employer from doing what they're intending on doing, which is terminating the employee. So more and more we're seeing this, and more we're seeing courts having to deal with this because there are protections. The law says if you are on leave for mental leave, for mental health, or for sick leave, you are entitled to return to your job, same conditions, same job title, when you're ready to come back. And if the employer wants to let you go while you're on leave, they're going to have to demonstrate to a court and say, look, we were going to let this employee go. And I know that they're on leave right now and they have certain protections, but we were clear about the fact that we have enough here to show that this is not an employee that was going to be kept much longer. And it's very risky because the courts really come down hard on employers that get rid of employees just because they go on leave, whether it be mat leave, whether it be sick leave, whatever it is. The courts do not want employees suffering because they decided to start a family or because they're suffering from mental health. So if an employer wants to take that road and terminate you while you're on leave, they best be certain that they have enough there to be able to eliminate any doubt whatsoever that they're doing so because the employee is not there.
Wouldn't the question then be, if you had enough to justify this, if it ended up in court, the question would be, well, if you had all this, why did you wait? Why didn't you do it if you had all this?
So, Aaron, next week, can you'll answer your question because those are exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The court's going to ask that question. Well, why didn't you let them go before? Why were you waiting? What was the point of waiting for this? And that's the biggest obstacle for the employer. Why did we wait? How come we're bringing this up now when they're not here instead? So you're absolutely right. Number one obstacle is that question right there.
By the way, when these cases do go to court, and I know they do, right? You mentioned that. Typically, the employer who decides to do this ends up losing.
Well, the employer, I'll tell you, if you want my experience, over 90% of these cases get settled before they go to court.
Okay.
And the reason why is because there's risk on both sides, and the risk is severe for both, and they're not sure which way the court's going to go. They're not sure which way the testimonies are going to go. And believe it or not, like I've spoken to many employees, they get nervous. They go in front of an arbitrator, even if it's not a traditional courtroom. It's nerve-wracking to sit there and be questioned for 3 hours, and going through all your different files.
Right.
So some of them are like, you know what, I'm just going to accept this settlement and then move on with my life.
Okay, because my dumb question is, you say they have both something to lose. The employer obviously has to lose someone that they may have to take back and pay a salary to. If you've already lost your job, it seems to me you don't have a whole lot left to lose, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, you can lose if you lose your claim as an employee. Well, you get nothing, and as an employer, it's not just a question of paying them the severance. There's punitive parts to that as well, and in some cases, they actually force the employer to take back the employee, hire them, and pay them for all the salary that they lost in this court proceeding.
Yeah, so I get that from the employer's perspective, but from the employee's perspective, you just lost your job. You got nothing to lose. Go and fight it anyway.
Yeah, but if somebody makes an offer to you for what you believe to be is 70% of the total, that's what you got to weigh.
Is that the number, 70%?
No, it varies depending on the risk, but usually it's around there. I would say 65 to 70 is a common one.
All right, Chris, out of time. Thank you. I appreciate it as always.
Thank you.
Take good care, Chris. All right. I'm sorry. I just, logical questions, I thought.
Close your eyes, and you can hear the entire world come alive. 2026 FIFA World Cup is on, and you can stream it all live on TSN Radio. From the opening kickoff to the final celebration, every match, every moment. Listen to FIFA World Cup on TSN Radio.
Gives Canada the lift off.
Available on iHeartRadio.